This. Here we go. We're going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Capital Gains Tax Solutions and Expert CRE Secrets podcast / YouTube breakdown with me and Brent Silberbauer from Northern California, multifamily broker, one of my business partners. Today, we're talking about the 4 factors that fuel momentum. In fact, he and I recently listened to a podcast by who, Brent? Who are you listening to?
Craig Groeschel from Life Church.
Craig Groeschel. And if you haven't heard of Craig Groeschel, you need to know Craig because he's, I think, one of the most dynamic leaders. In fact, he's been what I would call a virtual mentor for me for many years now. And he has one of the top podcasts called the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. So Craig, if you are listening to this out there, thank you for everything you're doing. And we're going to be breaking down exactly what you told us to do, which is to build some momentum, cash some vision, ignite that vision by some faith right now. And so let's dive right into what are the 4 factors that fuel momentum. Brent Silberbauer, kick us off. What's the top line here before we get started?
Okay. From my memory, from watching it, what it is cast vision consistently. And just have a vision that you're passionate about, that you're pursuing, and cast that vision for your team consistently.
Absolutely. And so what Craig says, and we're going to get into this, he says, positive momentum is a leader's best friend.
That's right.
But negative momentum can be a leader's worst enemy. And so we're going to learn how to build momentum, how to keep it, and how to get it back if you've lost it. And this one, we're going to talk about how to build it. And so Craig says that momentum is the force that propels your organization forward. And this is the big statement, Brent, which I thought just kind of took me back here. And I had to sit down and rewind the podcast, listen to it again. He says, listen to this. Momentum is greater than the sum of all your leadership, strategy, and resources combined.
Yeah.
So Brent, when you hear that, what does that make you think about? It's greater than the sum of all your leadership, strategy, and resources combined.
Well, it's hugely important. And it's kind of this, a little bit of like a mysterious force that becomes at work in your organization, that when you have it, just everything comes easier. Everything comes better. And when you don't have it, consequently, everything is much more difficult. And so getting it is essential, I guess, is in a nutshell.
Absolutely. And by the way, he says, if you're asking yourself whether or not you have the momentum, guess what? You probably don't, or at least it's lacking, right? If you're having yourself, do I have momentum right now? In other words, it's something that you do sense and know that you have this momentum that's moving forward. And I think about it when I played, college basketball, played high school football, all of those things. The saying goes when you're winning and everything's going well, like the rest of it kind of just doesn't matter as much. Or the guy who's on the bench who's complaining a lot about playing time, but like, hey, we're winning championships. So like, we're not really hearing you as much, right? When the momentum is moving forward. Is that making sense, Brent?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you're getting that flow. I mean, you're just getting that, where time just kind of stands still. And, and you like lose track of time. I mean, it's just like, you're just in the game, you're in the flow, everything's working, everything's feeling good. You're on fire, as a NBA Jam would put it from the 90s.
Wasn't that the best when you were like, you're on fire, and then you just couldn't wait to get the ball back from him because you're just going to go crush another 3, and then that was some of the best games. You got to make sure that the computer assistance is off, everybody, right? Because you don't want the buddy just coming back off of your fire just to keep the game close. But that's another subject. But I think that's a good point you bring up, Brent. It's the flow, right? If you want to know if he has some momentum, do you feel like you're in the flow? When you're practicing your cold calls, when you're in meetings, when you're creating content, when you're whatever it is that you're doing to move your business forward, are you in the flow state, right? Are you turning off distractions, and are you feeling and sensing that momentum? Are you when you're in business and moving deals forward, getting deals under contract, signing listings, whatever it is that you're doing for your business, are you in that flow state? So Brent, what would you say has helped you to create momentum in a flow state for your practices of your business?
Yeah, I think, for me, I mean, what I can say personally is a lot of times like having a breakthrough. Like I remember when I first got started in the business, like getting that first listing and then marketing it out, and then people see that listing and then they're calling you about it, and then you're talking to them about their listing and what do they have, and then they're impressed with your marketing. And so, and then it just kind of feeds off each other. But that initial first breakthrough where everything's new and you're trying to push into something new and different, you get that listing or whatever it is. I think that's been huge for me. And then consequently, when you go through a slump or a dry season, whatever, for whatever reason, where things, you're not having those listings, you're not having those phone calls, it just it's tough. So yeah, that's what I say. It's basically getting that breakthrough. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, Craig puts it well. He says creating momentum is like launching a rocket, right?
Yeah.
Think about like Apollo 13 getting off the ground, the tremendous amount of force and energy. Yeah. In fact, he puts it like this: it's a disproportionate amount of energy to get off of the ground, right? To break through on those 200 cold calls per week, to break through and make that first, YouTube video, or that first, a walkthrough video on your phone that was awkward, to when you're stammering and stuttering and the lighting was bad, or to go on that first listing appointment, or to negotiate those deals, or do that first 1031 exchange, that first deferred sales trust, that whatever that is, that takes a disproportionate amount of energy to get off the ground, to get your business up and running. But guess what? Once you overcome the force of gravity, you can maintain your momentum with minimal effort. In other words, like once the plane is off the ground and it's cruising at an altitude, you can maintain your momentum with less effort, okay? And he says there's 4 forces that can hold back all of our momentum. Number 1, what's known. Number 2, what's safe. Number 3, what's easy. And number 4, what's comfortable. So Brent, out of those 4, what would you say is the number 1 thing that would hold you back, hold us back, or just a real estate or business professional in general? What's the forces that tend to hold you back the most? Known, safe, easy, or comfortable?
Yeah, well, all of them. But if I could pick one, probably what's known. I hate learning new systems or new CRMs or new marketing strategies or new this or new that. So probably, getting that breakthrough, learning all the stuff that I've already known, and just staying there is probably the biggest threat for me.
Absolutely. I would say for me, what's comfortable, I've had to fight that in my whole life. Like I was the guy in the class who was like, how can I just get the A or the B in the least amount of effort, right? Unless it was something I actually really enjoyed, like history or math. But everything else was like, hey, how do I, just hang out with the buddies, go to sports and, go compete in basketball or football. Or how do I, my mom, I remember she'd have me do I call landscaping, but it really was just called picking weeds, right? We'd move rocks, pick weeds. And I tell you, it was the most painful thing to go through, like, hey, pick the weed, and it's like the little tiny weed, and make sure you get the whole root out. And she would watch me and like, and it was I'm like, Mom, this is just not comfortable. But she trained me. She trained me to like be meticulous, to push through the uncomfortable. But I think in business that can happen, right? We can get to we might set a goal, or we might get into a way of doing business, and then business shifts and change. And we're like, well, we're comfortable. We should get business like this. And we think that's going to continue to produce. But it's getting outside of that comfort zone and trying to gain more momentum somewhere else that often is the breakthrough. Any thoughts on that, Brent?
Oh, yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So Craig goes on to say, to overcome these forces and start building momentum, you need to change what you do. So we all need to change what we do. So remember, if we're doing what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. And so there are 4 factors that fuel momentum. Okay. And if you have these factors in place, then you and your team are right for building a positive momentum. But first, he says to name the area of your life you'd like to see momentum. So right now, and it's not just business, right? It could be financial, it could be relational, it could be physical, it could be faith. Okay. So think of that area, Brent, you and I right now. What's the one area that we want to see that momentum built, and be thinking about that. Identify that. Take 5 seconds to do that. And then we're going to dive into the 4 ways to build it right now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You got it in your mind?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Number 1, momentum is ignited by vision. It's ignited by vision. So this is like the rocket ship. We're gonna light the rocket ship, right? So it's ignited by vision. He says this is the action statement. Oh, by the way, there's in the good book, the Bible, it says where there is no vision, the people perish, right? And so what I would say to any business professional, anyone listening to this, right, where there is no vision for your business is likely, and then perish is maybe a tough word, but essentially what it's saying is it's dying or it's on the way to death, right? Which is a strong way to think about it. So action statement. He says, you inspire action with an unwavering white hot vision to fulfill your mission. So do you have a clear vision that's so compelling that it's going to pull you in that direction, especially when momentum is lacking or it's not even ignited yet, right? So one of the biggest mistakes most leaders make, myself included, is to undervalue the power of vision. If you lack momentum, it's very likely that you lack vision. If you want momentum, you and your entire team, your family, everyone that whatever it is that you're trying to build for needs to know the vision. Your vision must be clear. Our vision must be clear. It must be consistent. It must be compelling. It gives the why behind every what. It gives the why behind every what. So, Brent, what is the driving vision for the area of your life and my life that we want to develop, right? Or any thoughts on this piece? Brent?
No, it's super good. It's super essential. And it's one of those things that is important, but not urgent. And so I think a lot of times we just fall back into what's comfortable, the day-to-day, the maintenance, the routine. No one's knocking on our door and saying, what's your vision statement? Except for right now. So sometimes it can go neglected. And so anyway, so it's essential. It's very important. So anyways, to answer your question, so the area that I want to grow in is basically my business. And so the vision behind my business is essentially to help people get the highest return on investment for their assets, for their family or whatever. And I do that through basically leveraging digital marketing and getting their whatever real estate asset they have, whether it be multifamily or commercial or even residential. Basically, it's just helping them to get the most eyeballs on there and to sell it for top dollar. And it's something that is unique and something that I've pioneered and grown in. So anyway, so that's probably my vision.
I love that vision. And I would say too, when you became and have become an elite digital marketer, right? In the very beginning, you had a compelling vision to become elite digital marketer with video, with communication, on camera, going through this, building up the momentum. And I imagine when you first started, Brent, to where you're at today, it wasn't the same. Probably the same thing with my podcast, right? When I first started, it wasn't as great, right? But I jumped on this thing and just started talking, right? And now here we are. So talk about that journey of when you first started your digital marketing, to where you're at now.
Yeah, well, it was COVID, and basically no one was really doing these video walkthroughs of real estate, but things were shut down for in person. So basically, I just I have a media arts background and a degree in video production, and so I just said, hey, look, let's do this, and then I partnered with the marketing guy, who is incredibly smart with Facebook and Google ads and all this other stuff, and just basically created content that was this like walkthrough video, and then paired it with this distribution strategy to target people. And the first house, it was all experimental, but we got a third of our entire city. We live in a town of 100,000 people, and 27,000 people saw the video at least. And it was just like, holy cow, this is crazy. And and that the homes, sold, and everything was great. And then I just kept doing it, and the results were fantastic. But it was this like initial, like it wasn't known, it wasn't easy, it wasn't comfortable, it was all brand new at the time. We had to push through all that stuff to get that breakthrough. And then that was the breakthrough. And then my phone just started ringing with all kinds of people trying to sell their property.
Amazing. You had a vision, and then you also had hired some expertise, which we're going to go into the next few parts here. So got to have a vision. It's got to be clear. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be compelling. By the way, vision leaks, right? So even what Brent and I are doing right now is an opportunity for us to cash vision, share our vision, encourage our vision, because it leaks. And also it drifts if you don't have it front and center, and it's consistently a part of what you're talking about, what you're thinking about. So important. Okay. So number 2, to keep momentum, it's activated by faith. We have to believe that what we're called to do is imperative and possible. Imperative and possible. Action statement. You lead with a third line crossing, big thinking, risk taking, faith. I thought this was an interesting thing, right? Third line crossing. Like, what is he talking about, Craig? What are you talking about? So you might have a dozen good reasons why you aren't accomplishing your vision, but you can make excuses or you can make progress, but you can't make both. So Brent, we can make excuses or we can make progress, but we cannot make both. Whatever we're doing, if we don't believe something is even possible, you'll prove that it's not. It's just kind of the way that, we all function as humans. If we don't believe it's possible, guess what? We're going to prove that. So what does third line crossing mean? And this is taken from an idea from Craig's book, Lead Like It Matters. And basically there's 3 levels of buy-in. And it's the first person, by the way, you need to look at this is your own buy-in. And then you can think about your team. But here's the 3 lines. Number 1 line, I believe enough to benefit from the mission. And he talks about if you have team members or even yourself, like if what you're doing is I can benefit, I can get a paycheck, I can get paid, and I believe enough to show up to get paid for the time that I put into it. That's like level 1. Nothing wrong with that, but that's level 1. If you want to level up momentum to level 2, I believe enough to contribute comfortably to the mission. So he gives the example of the team member shows up, gets paid, does a good job, and has a great attitude and maybe, likes to attend to team building events or does something a little bit above and beyond what's been called for. And then he says the third line, which is next level to build momentum. And he goes, actually, this is actually where momentum is built. The other 2, you're not really building momentum. You're either sustaining or you're declining. Okay. He says where momentum is built is I believe enough to give my life to the mission. I believe enough to give my life to the mission. When I heard this, Brent, I'm going, wow. Am I believing enough in my vision for my business and what I'm doing to give my life to the mission? Because how can I expect the team members to do that if I'm not leading with that, right? So any thoughts on activated by faith and giving your life to the mission, Brent?
Well, yeah, faith, you need action. Faith if you truly believe, then you will take action. That's just it. Our actions are determined by our thoughts and our beliefs. And so, yeah, it totally makes sense. And you have to have that vision that's compelling that like, man, I believe in this. I want to give myself to this and, and do my best. Absolutely. Towards it, give my life to it. That's huge. And
it's daily too. Cause some days I'm like, I just gotta, you want to show up and just, what's the word? Just mail it in, right? I'd imagine I look like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or some of the great sports, Steph Curry. I remember those days they're probably like, man, I just kind of want to mail it in. But it's like, no, I'm going to be elite. If you're going to be elite, you got to be willing to give your life to the mission, which is powerful. Okay. Number 3 way to build momentum. It's supported by systems. And this is where I want to connect what Brent said before about he hired an expert in an area that he wasn't as proficient in, to help him build out the digital marketing distribution, right? And targeting, right? Where he found his expertise was creating the content, and he hired and he built a system. By the way, I was listening to Atomic Habits. By the way, I happened to listen to a podcast this morning with John Maxwell, another amazing leader, interviewing the author for Atomic Habits. And he talked about you don't rise to the level of our goals or our ambition or our vision. We fall to the level of our systems, right? And so momentum is supported by systems because it helps us to create intentional systems that support, sustain, and propel the mission, the vision forward. So Brent, talk about the importance of systems.
Yeah, like as soon as I learned this new thing, I immediately started hiring people and training them and getting systems down. Basically, like we just started an extensive like screen capture tutorial, like internal like training YouTube, so that I can plug and play people in there. Video production and all the stuff that we were doing is quite complicated, and editing it and making it right, and everything was very specific, and the scripts and all the stuff that we were doing. And then, so it's like putting that all in a system. And now I have a guy, we come out, we know what to do, we shoot, blah, 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 blah. And it makes it so much easier, and it helps that momentum to move forward. Where initially it took me hours and hours and hours doing it myself, figuring everything else myself, then taking hours to do the training, but I knew that was going to save me in the long term. So, I mean, that's just one example of it.
I want to give you a round of applause, Brent, because that is not easy to do. And it's what's giving you the momentum, right? To become the digital marketer, to do the sales, just to help get the highest and best price for your clients, do all the things that you're doing. I think it's amazing. By the way, the right intentional systems will sustain your momentum. Wrong or even unintentional systems will hurt your momentum. And by the way, we all have systems. Here's the thing that Craig was saying. The question is, are the systems intentional, right? Or are they unintentional and they're hurting your momentum, right? It's like we all have habits. The question are they intentional habits that we have a clear vision for and faith that we're going to be somewhere else in the future because of them? Or are these habits that are unintentional, not planned, not thoughtful, taking us to the places that we don't want to be? So what is a system? A system is how you accomplish your what. It's who does what, when, and how. Who does what, when, and how. If you want a specific result, you need to build an intentional system to accomplish that result. Here's what I've learned, by the way, as a entrepreneur, as a real estate broker, founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, is hire the who, don't be the how. And so my number one hire that I would encourage everyone, if you don't have someone on your team yet, is what's called a systems design architect. A systems design architect. And the entire role of this system design architect is to do exactly what we're talking about here. Build intentional systems that define who does what, when, and how, okay, to help us accomplish our vision. So I want, for example, a specific result on the podcast, on the book we launched, on all of our systems and transaction coordination for all of our deals, for reaching out to book on other shows, to all of these things. And so we've built systems. And then guess what that system design architect did? Because what quickly happens is you go from designing and delegating, which is where the entrepreneur should be. Everyone should be as much in that zone as possible, to deciding the work and doing the work. Okay, so I'll say those again. There's designing and delegating, and there's deciding the work and doing the work. And you want to be, and we all want to be in designing and delegating. And so as soon as I delegate it and we helped to build some systems, guess what? We found her doing and deciding the work, which quickly stopped her from developing and building systems, so we quickly hired another person to take more off of her plate so she can go back to designing and delegating the work. Same thing with me as well, right? So we're constantly trying to accomplish a specific outcome. And so our systems are a combination of what you expect and what you allow. So if you want different systems, change what you expect and audit what you allow. So essentially this means too, doesn't mean as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you can just completely check out. You've got to be able to inspect the system and make slight adjustments along the way of what's going right, what's going wrong, and improve it. So we have a saying around here, Brent, it goes like this: every day in every way we get a little better. Every day in every way we get a little better. And mostly this has to do with our systems. Like, how do we make it just a little more efficient, a little bit better, a little bit clearer and cleaner? By the way, here's the good news, Brent. We don't have to create all the systems ourselves. If you're clear about what we expect, we can reward it when we see it, correct it when we don't. We can build a team that can build the systems. And guess what? Most entrepreneurs aren't great at building systems. I mean, we might be, in other words, it might take a lot of energy from us, right? Or it might take us away from our highest and best, which is creating content, solving problems, being in front of the client, right? Versus the back end, which is just as equally important. But we can hire those right people. Any thoughts on that, Brandon? I know I just talked a lot right there, but I had a lot in there to get out.
It's so important, and you're right. Usually as an entrepreneur, you're more creative, you're more, big 30,000 foot vision. We're going over here. And then the systems is a minute details like dot this I, cross this T, make sure not to forget that. And that is the crazy making stuff for me. I absolutely hate the small details because I'm just much more big thinking. And yeah, and I think that's the trick is finding the right people too, because you can have the right systems, but if someone's not gifted in that area, and so then the hiring becomes a big deal. And I just realized when I get the right person, a lot of the problems go away. And when I have the wrong person, I go back down the ladder and I'm like, hey, no, this is not how you do it. This is not how you do it. This is not how you do it, and then it sucks up all my time. So the systems and getting the right people in the right seats with the right systems is so important, and it is not easy.
Absolutely. It's not easy, but when you do find that rock star, and by the way, I also found that you don't necessarily just find great leaders or great rock stars. You have to build great leaders and great rock stars. Now they have to have three things. We definitely, for all of our hiring, humble, hungry, and smart. Patrick Lencioni, the ideal team player. If you haven't read the book, read the book. Okay. If they're humble, hungry, and smart, and the smart is EQ, emotional intelligence. Okay. Not just IQ, then you can build, right. And so realize that if you're hiring a virtual assistant, you're hiring a team member. I learned this the hard way, that I thought I might just find the end all be all VA, virtual assistant. And it took through me learning how to be a leader and a builder of really systems, and delegation is kind of the key skill set to learn, that I was able to free up my time and energy to go back to the things that I love to do. So let's move to the last one, which, by the way, so we've covered vision is ignited by, momentum is ignited by vision. Momentum is activated by faith. Momentum is supported by systems. And last, number 4, momentum is sustained by grit. So as leaders, we need to be compelled by a white hot vision that's so intense it produces a grit that won't quit. Is what you're doing going to make an impact for you, for your family, for the community, for the clients you serve? What is it that's going to sustain you during the tough times? Right now, it's tough. The real estate market is tough. Transactions are down. Interest rates are up. Things are uncertain. What's going to sustain you to move forward? And grit is the key ingredient. Most successful leaders, it's not their knowledge, their skill, or their desire, but resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back, to thrive in the face of adversity. So how do we grow our resilience? Well, Craig says we start with mindset. We need to have a mindset that knows, we all need a mindset that knows leadership is incredibly difficult. It's difficult to be a leader. Leading people will be a thrill and a burden. And he talked about this tension, right, between a leader, us as leaders, leading and building people, knowing we have that ability to do that. And the other side, that, gosh, it's a burden, it's hard. And he goes, in fact, if you don't have both going, you're probably not going hard enough. You're probably not, diving enough. So he puts it like this. In fact, if leading people isn't simultaneously your greatest gift and your greatest burden, you probably aren't doing it right. So what does that mean to you, Brent, when you hear that?
Oh, it's 100%. So it's just hard. And, it has to be, a burden is usually, like, you think it's like a bad thing, but there is, I think, a burden that is good, that it's like, you want this to be good. You want people to be succeeding and thriving in your organization and all that other stuff. And it's not easy to get that result. But it's like, you have this burden, you have this burden to do it right, to get it done, to build people, to have them grow. And you have to have that. And if you don't have it, if it's just like, hey, this is, I give them these instructions and then I just walk away and, then I yell at them when they don't do it right. It's probably, it's not it. And that's been my thing. It's called swoop and poop. You just swoop in, here, do this, swoop in. It's not right. What are you doing? And just, trash them and then fire them. No, I'm just, that's terrible. But you got to have that burden for the people and the organization, the vision, and all this other stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's tough because sometimes we're hiring people because we're, in a desperation mode. Our business is either going too fast or maybe it's slowing down and we're in the wrong spot as a leader. Our mindset is not right. It's not about building them as leaders. And it's about just getting, it's like hiring workers to get the tasks done because we're so overwhelmed or we're so tired or we're so exhausted, right? And I think there's a good saying that fatigue makes cowards of us all, right? Wow. We've got to make sure that we're in the right spot, and we're going to build momentum through showing up and building leaders, right? Building leaders. So that is something we try to practice here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions and with our EXP Mastery team. Essentially, like, we're not here to hire workers. We're hiring team members, right? That are going to be arm in arm marching forward for the mission, for the vision. But as a part of that, our commitment to you is to build you as a leader as best as we can. It's to encourage you, to challenge you, to hold you accountable, to grow as a leader. Because the way Craig puts it, when the leader gets better, everything gets better, right? And if the leaders and everything rises and falls on leadership, right? Leadership. And so to build momentum with grit, you want to make sure that you develop the skill of showing back up and leading people in a way that will push through the challenges of everyday business, everyday life. Okay, so wrapping it up, the key to staying passionate decades into leadership is ensuring our vision is about something bigger than ourselves. It is about serving. It's about a calling. It's about something that's bigger than ourselves. And so we want to give credit where credit's due. This is all Craig Groeschel. In fact, we're going to drop it in the link on Facebook and on YouTube is likely as well. Make sure my team gets those notes. And we're going to include the leadership podcast. And then we're going to include the show notes that he has, which we're just talking about here. Brent Silverbauer, if people want to get in touch with you or any last words of encouragement for anyone listening to us out there, what would you say?
Yeah, I just say it's worth it, and all things are possible. Like, I think some of the stuff, it could be overwhelming at first and like, man, I'm so far away from being this great leader and having this great organization. But if you just have that vision, you find that vision and, you go after it, you do the 20-mile march, just a little by little, getting a little bit better, every way, every day, or whatever you said, it's just exponentially builds and you will get there. And this is part of it.
Absolutely. And then you sustain that by systems and hiring the people, right? Systems and hiring the people so that you don't just, start to get that and then everything kind of teeters off. You want to keep that momentum because, right, it's greater than the sum of all of our leadership, strategy, and resources combined is momentum. So get the momentum. Check out Craig Groeschel's Leadership Podcast. Hey, give us a like, share this with someone who can be encouragement to as well. And you're listening to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, also streaming expert CRE secrets. And Brent Silverbauer and I are also part of EXP. If you're interested in looking at what it can mean to work with leaders like us, we would love the opportunity to talk with you about being a part of our team. You can go to expmastery.com or just reach out to Brent Silverbauer or Brett Swartz. That's me, where you can find us basically anywhere on social media. We appreciate everyone.